28th plenary meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, 185 countries vote on behalf of Cuba and against the U.S. blockade against the island. Venezuela earned this Thursday the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa to the Prime Minister of sentencing at the Grenadines, Gonsalves, in recognition of the martyrs of his political, academic, cultural, and humanist career. Türkiye Defense Minister confirmed the departure of several ships loaded with grain from Ukrainian ports. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll begin with the news. Stay with us. On Thursday, the 28th plenary meeting of United Nations General Assembly took place. The voting of the draft resolutions entitled necessity of ending the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba, presented by the Cuban Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bruno Rodriguez. After the issuing their statement before the General Assembly, member countries vote on the draft resolution for the 13th time. The final results concluded with 185 votes in favor, 2 against being the United States and Israel, and 2 abstentions being Ukraine and Brazil. All around the world, many demand the end of these coercive measures that has only brought hardships to the Cuban people over the past 60 years. Speaking at the 28th plenary meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, the Cuban Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bruno Rodriguez, stated that the embargo imposed by the United States against Cuba is a deliberate act of economic warfare intended to obstruct the island's incoming revenues.
3 decades have gone by since this assembly first started to demand, as it has continued to do every year thereafter, the end of this US policy against Cuba, which has been classified as an act of genocide and has the effect of a permanent pandemic, a never-ending hurricane, which has been universally rejected. It is a deliberate act of economic warfare intended to obstruct the country's incoming revenues, to destroy the government's ability to attend to the needs of the people.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cuba, Bruno Rodriguez, emphasized the United States allocate tens of millions of US dollars to finance the political apartheid that provokes misinformation, hatred, and destabilization in the Caribbean island.
The United States government allocates tens of millions of dollars from the federal budget, as well as some additional covert funds. It also recruits government and private institutions to finance the political operators who launch these disinformation, hatred, and destabilization campaigns on social media against Cuba.
The representation of Nicaragua to the United Nations reiterated its rejection of the economic blockade at the U.S. against Cuba.
We condemn all the aggressive policies against Cuba, such as the persecution of companies, ships, and shipping companies that send fuel, food, and other supplies to Cuba. The arbitrary and unjustified inclusion of Cuba on the State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism, the attack of all sources of income for the country, the intimidation of third parties, and the reinforcement of pressures on governments, banking institutions, and businessmen around the world.
In a contradictory manner, the United States representative to the United Nations indicated rejection of the Cuban resolution.
Of America opposes this resolution, but supports the Cuban people, and we will continue to seek ways to support them. We encourage this body to urge the Cuban government to listen to the Cuban people's demands so they can shape their own future.
We'll take our very first break now, but remember you can follow us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Venezuela awarded on Thursday the Doctor Honoris Causa degree to the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Gonsalves, in virtue of the merits of his political, academic, cultural, and humanistic career in favor of the emancipation of his people. The ceremony took place in the Gaston Parra Auditorium of the Central Bank of Venezuela, BCV, in Caracas. Last October 27th, the Caribbean country celebrated its Independence Day, for which the President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, called on the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to deepen relations of brotherhood and solidarity with Venezuela due to the libertarian
It's a tremendous honor, not just for me, but for the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the people of the Caribbean and of Latin America, all of us who have been struggling over the years, and those who have gone before us for Caribbean and Latin American unity.
The principal of the Bolivarian University of Venezuela highlights the patriotic values of the Caribbean leader Ralph Gonsalves.
Well, today the Bolivarian University of Venezuela has had the honor of awarding an honorary doctorate to the Prime Minister of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Comrade Ralph Gonsalves. Today the university dresses in gala, honor and glory for having the privilege of awarding this distinction to a personality like Ralph Gonsalves, who has been a fighter totally committed to the cause of the peoples of the Caribbean and with the causes of the Latin American peoples, in addition to vindicated what has been the historical operation of our peoples.
Appointed head of the transitional team, Vice President Gerardo Atmin, met with Cyril Nogueira, President Jair Bolsonaro's chief of staff, to begin the transition to the future government led by President-elect Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva. Vice President-elect Gerardo Atmin, Workers' Party chief Gleisi Hoffman, and campaign coordinator Aloysio Mercadante will coordinate the transition with Bolsonaro's administration. The most important task of the transition team is to have access to all figures concerning the situation of public accounts and to define what room for maneuvers will exist for economic policy. The transition period also ensures the functioning of the federal administration and enables the incoming government to collect information on existing projects. On Wednesday, Chilean President Gabriel Boric submitted to a Congress a reform bill to turn the current private pension system into a model with the state and employers' participation to increase the amount delivered. Boric said the reform, which has been postponed for over 15 years, will put an end to the current system called Pension Fund Administrators Institute under Pinochet, will have three financing sources. Individual workers through mandatory contributions via finance funds, through contribution paid by employers which will amount to 6% of the worker's salary, eligibility to a new social insurance which will ultimately allow to increase future pensions. On Thursday, the Ignero manufacturing company temporarily terminated its contract in Haiti, leaving more than 1,700 people unemployed in the midst of the severe multi-structural crisis affecting the country. The general director of the textile company, Alain de Birol, sent a letter to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security where he points at the hostile economic scenario and the crisis of security that as the main reasons for the massive layoff and its second shutdown. After gangs took over the country and blocked access to fuel sources, not only the companies have been forced to close, but also hospitals and schools. Preparations for the midterm elections in the United States are underway. We go to Reynaldo Taladride from Cuba. He comments on the impact that the figure of former President Donald Trump could have on these elections.
And more on the United States midterm elections, which are the elections that take place between two presidential elections, which concern all seats at the House of Representatives, 1/3 of the Senate, plus mayors, governors, and some law amendments in almost every state. In these elections, there is a major issue that will be getting the most attention: Trumpism. After all this happened, and all this being written and said, Donald Trump still enjoys the support of most Republican voters. It is true that this support has somewhat diminished from over a 60% approval down to over a 40%, but still, he is the most popular figure within the Republican Party and the one with the most followers, except for independent voters or among the Democrats. How did Trumpism do during the primaries? The primaries are the elections within the Republican Party to choose the candidates that will represent them. Well, Trumpism was a defining criteria in nominating candidates. For instance, Donald Trump looked and financed candidates to replace all those Republicans who voted in favor of his impeachment. Some of his candidates won, some lost, but bottom line, there are many candidates backed by Trump going to the midterms in November. Who might benefit from that? Some say the Democrats might, because this alienates independent voters, conservative Democrats, and even many Republicans who do not want to see their party become a Trumpist party. But that remains to be seen, because there are two Trumpists, unconditional allies of President Trump while he was in office: Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, great Trump allies. They are conservative, ultra-right-wing. They have been quite aggressive on the issue of immigration, like on sending illegal immigrants to other destinations, etc. And yet, both of them are leading candidates and are very likely to be re-elected in their states, with a steady 8 percentage point advantage over their Democrat contenders. So it remains to be seen if Trumpism without Trump, meaning someone with his very same philosophy but without his vulnerabilities, could be the winning candidate. In any case, there is no doubt Trumpism is a central issue in these elections, vis-à-vis the 2024 nomination of Donald J. Trump as presidential candidate. Here in teleSUR, we'll give you details and an analysis on whatever happens on election day.
We have more news coming up after this financial break, so don't go away. Welcome back. On Thursday, Turkey Defense Minister confirmed the departure of several ships loaded with grain from Ukrainian ports upon the restart of the corridor agreed between Russia and Ukraine last July. According to the Turkish Defense Minister, at least 6 ships set sail from Ukraine a day after Russia announced that it had received sufficient assurance that Kiev will not use the sea corridor to launch attacks. The Turkish minister commented that the ship will sail through the Black Sea, which has already allowed the exports of 9.7 million tons of Ukrainian grains and other agricultural products. The agreement booked by the UN and Turkey allowed for the resumption of food export from Ukraine to the rest of the world despite the conflict. Russia has denounced a Kiev plot to conduct a new attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. According to Russian sources, the cisterna was prevented. According to a statement by the Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev at a meeting with his counterpart from the Community of Independent Republics, the attack will have been ordered by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, despite the presence of members of the International Atomic Energy Agency at the facility. According to the report by Vladimir Rogov, a member of the Regional Administration Council, Volodymyr Zelensky allegedly ordered one of the plant's employees to detonate a series of explosives left at the facility by his troops sometime between February and March this year. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov arrived in Amman, the capital of Jordan, on a working visit to the Western Asian country. Upon his arrival, the Russian top diplomat met with Abdullah II. Foreign Minister Lavrov also held a bilateral meeting with Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Hussein Abdullah al-Safari to discuss many regional and international issues. Both diplomats focus on present international issues, and particularly the conflict in Ukraine, the Israeli-Palestinian settlement, Iran, and the Gulf, among others. Amman is the first destination on the Russian Foreign Minister's working visit around the Middle East. During a joint press conference with his Jordanian counterpart, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov called on United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to fulfill the obligations that he placed on himself, referring to the removal of obstacles to Moscow fertilizers and grain exports.
With regard to the grain deal, we were pleased that, at the initiative of Türkiye, the Ukrainian leadership signed on paper guarantees not to repeat attempts to use the humanitarian route in the Black Sea for military purpose. And, as you know, the implementation of the Ukrainian part of the deal has resumed. At the same time, we still do not see any result with regard to the second part of the package proposed at the time by Secretary General Guterres, which involves the removal of any obstacles to the export of Russian fertilizers and grains. Once again, called on the Secretary General, I told the Minister and his colleagues about this in detail today, to ensure that he fulfills the obligations that he placed on himself in accordance with his own initiative.
After we have come to the end of this brief, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.